Dr. Aimee LaBrie with Loehr Health Center. I am partnering with the Doula Foundation to bring you healthy tips and tidbits that can help your family, help you raise healthier children and babies. Today we are going to talk about sugars, specifically sneaky sugars. We are going into the holiday season. We're rolling right off of Halloween and moving into Thanksgiving, and then from Thanksgiving we roll into Christmas. There's all kinds of snacks and desserts and sugars and Halloween candy that get brought up as obvious sources of sugar for our kids. But I want to talk about the way that companies and corporations can sometimes manipulate us into buying products that we think are fantastic options for our kids, but really have a lot of hidden sugars in them that maybe aren't the best option for our kids. So when we talk about our children and sugar, I think that we tend to think about the behavioral aspects. You load them full of sugar and they start bouncing off of the walls and they become terrors and have meltdowns and cry. And really, sugar has overall health consequences that really go above and beyond behavior. Our sugar intake has drastically increased over the past 100 years and has even more increased in the United States over the last 20 years. The U.S. has the highest consumption of sugar than any other industrialized nation, even more so than countries in Europe. We have more sugar consumption here than anywhere. We get marketed to a lot more in the United States. And I think that can sometimes trick us into believing that we're making really good choices for our family when really some of the things that we think are healthy are just absolutely terrible for our kids. When we talk about sugar, it has bigger health consequences than just behavior. Every health condition that are the leading causes of death in the United States, both for children and for adults, have a direct correlation with sugar. So higher incidences of sugar consumption lead to up to a 400% increase in cancer rates. It increases risk of heart disease. Obviously, well, not obviously to everybody, but the most common thing that we hear about with sugar is diabetes, which is true for both our adults and for our children. And then immune system. Sugar drastically decreases our immune system function. There is some research that shows that 4 tablespoons of sugar a day can drastically decrease the ability of white blood cells, our killer cells, to get into the cells of viruses and bacteria. So when our kids eat big doses of sugar going into this cold and flu and coronavirus time of year, then the chances of them being able to fight off these illnesses is decreased with sugar consumption. So in the U.S., the American Heart Association recommends less than 9 teaspoons of sugar per day for adult men, less than 6 teaspoons of sugar for adult women, and less than 5 teaspoons of sugar for our children, and less than 2 teaspoons of sugar for our toddlers, and almost no sugar for our infants. And when I say sugar, I mean added sugars like glucose or sucrose or dextrose, corn syrup solids. I'm not necessarily talking about the good sugars that are found in our fruits and vegetables. Those are the good healthy carbohydrates that come along with fiber. So some quick facts about sugar. 85% of all infants and toddlers in the United States, 85%, get added sugars every day. 60% of babies ages 6 to 11 months old mind you that babies don't even really need whole foods other than mommy milk until they're over a year old. But 60% of babies ages 6 to 11 months consumed a teaspoon of sugar a day. 98% of toddlers ages 12 months to 18 months old, remember they're just learning how to walk and they're just learning what foods they like, get at least 5.5 teaspoons of added sugar in a day. That's 98% of toddlers. 99% of toddlers age 19 to 23 months are getting more than 7 teaspoons of added sugar a day. So when we think about sugar, yeah, I mean, 5 teaspoons doesn't seem like that much, but if you add that up every day, that is about 41 cups a year. So think about your precious baby, age, 12 to 18 months is getting 41 cups of sugar in a year. And then if you look at the older toddlers, 19 to 23 months, if you add up 7 teaspoons of sugar a day, that's 53 cups of sugar in a year. Put that in perspective. The average bag of sugar is 5 pounds. This is a 4-pound bag, but 5 pounds. So if our toddlers ages 19 to 23 months are getting that 7 teaspoons of sugar a day, 53 cups a year, that is 10 of these bags of sugar. There's 5 pounds in a bag of sugar, about 10 cups in 5 pounds. So you're looking at 5-pound containers of that. That's a lot of sugar to be giving to your toddler. What does sugar do in our body? Well, it hits our emotional side of our brain. So we have this deep primitive side of our brain called the limbic system. It's kind of the really primitive part that has to do with survival, but it also has to do with emotions. So when we have something like sugar, it triggers our limbic system. It makes us feel good. It hits that pleasure center, so then we become addicted to it. It releases dopamine in our body and releases serotonin in our body. And the more we release dopamine and serotonin to sugar or any addictive substance, then eventually we have to have more and more of it to secrete that same amount of the feel-good dopamine and serotonin. So that means that we become addicted to sugar and we crave it. We want more and more and more and more of it. I notice it as an adult in my own body. When I have sugar, then I tend to want more sugar. Our kids, that hits their same part of their brain, so they are exposed to the same thing. So when we're talking about raising kids that aren't necessarily picky eaters, we want to try to decrease the amount of sugar they get. The other thing about our brain is that our brains work on, we look for the fastest sources of sugar that we can find. So when we are trying to survive in nature, we would look for really quick sources of sugar. And then we will tend to go back to those same places of sugar to get that same high and to feed our brains. So we're hardwired to look for quick sources of sugar. If we're giving sugars to our kids, then we are training their brains to seek out fast sources of sugar. So that's a lot of the reason why kids are, I call them carboholics. They love the pastas and the crackers and the cookies and the candies and the juices, because it's not just that it tastes good, it's that we're actually hardwired to look for those sources. So that's one of the things that happens in our body. The other thing that happens in our body when we get sugar is insulin is released. Insulin is what drives sugar to be stored into our cells. And so we want to have sources of storage of sugar so we can have energy for times that we are fasting or not eating. But the problem is when we're constantly exposed to sugar, our bodies are constantly secreting insulin, and eventually we become insulin resistant, meaning that we can't adequately get those sugars into our cells for storage. And that's what type 2 diabetes is. So we want to try to limit the amount of sugars. So let's talk about marketing. From a very, very early age, we are taught in our social systems that sugars are good. When we start celebrating birthdays, we're full of candies and cookies and birthday cakes. When we have terms of endearment for our loved ones, we call them sweetie and sweetheart and sugar pie. So in general, in our social environment, sugar and sweet things are a good thing. We are marketed to at a very, very early age. Think about the McDonald's commercials. Think about the cereal commercials. They're all geared towards kids and teaching our kids that sugar is fun and it's good for you. And then as parents, we're marketed to because it wants to hit on our on our emotions. And so they market to us by teaching us or telling us that if you feed your kid this, it's healthy and nutrition and you're doing good for your family. So let's think about things that we think are good, that we're doing good for our kids. We feed them yogurt because we think that dairy is good for them and because of the probiotics that are in yogurt. So we're taught by media that yogurt is a good thing for our kids. But let's just look at some common yogurts that are given to our kids. This one is Gogurt. And Gogurt is marketed to kids for our babies, our toddlers. It's marketed as a good first food. If you freeze these Gogurts and pack them in your kids' lunch, then they'll be thawed by lunchtime, and this is a good thing to pack in your kids' lunch. Well, if we look at the nutritional facts for Gogurt, Gogurt has 14 grams of sugar. It has 8 added grams of sugar, and if you look at this in real sugar, like measuring it out, converting it to table sugar, this is 1.12 tablespoons of sugar. Remember, there's 3 teaspoons in every tablespoon. So this is more than 3 teaspoons, almost 4 teaspoons full of sugar in one Gogurt. So remember that we want our kids to have no more than 5 in a day, and that's for our older school-age children. So we've already gotten most of our sugar in our one thing of Gogurt. Not a good option for our kiddos. The other thing, when I'm reading labels, so when I teach people to read labels, we're looking at the carbohydrates. So there is a total number of carbohydrates, and then there are the sugars. Total carbohydrates include fiber, and sugar is referring to the added sugar, like what they put in as sugar. The other thing is, underneath the nutrition facts on the labels are always what the ingredients are in each one of these foods, and they're listed in order by weight. So the thing that is listed first has the highest weight of ingredient. So in this one, the first ingredient is low-fat milk, and then the second ingredient is sugar. So you also have to look at what sugars can be called different names. You know, you've got corn syrup solids, you've got corn sugar, you've got brown rice sugar. All of those things are other names for sugars that are added. So this one, sugar is the second ingredient. Not a good option for your kiddos. Let's look at really, really healthy things. So we're going to look at, this is a Happy Tot. It's fiber and protein. It is a spinach bar. It looks really healthy. And you would think that this would be a really good option for your kids. In general, it is, but there's added sugar in this. So in Happy Tots, there are 4 grams of added sugar in this. 4 grams of sugar is a teaspoon. So when you think that this is a healthy option, it is for every once in a while, but if your kid gets 1 teaspoon of added sugar per day, then that adds up to be 7.6 cups of sugar in a year. So just by giving one of these healthy snacks, you're going to get an extra 7 pounds of sugar in a year. What?
There's a bigger bag right beside you. Hi, everyone. I'm the person filming.
Hi.
There's your 7.6 bag.
This is my 7.6
Yeah, there you
pounds
go.
of sugar. So if you've
Cups.
got your toddler,
7.6
your
cups.
newborn, giving 1 teaspoon of extra sugar per day, this is what it looks like in a year. Could you imagine it opening up your toddler's mouth and just pouring the sugar right in? It's crazy to me. Okay, so then we're going to look at Earth's Best Bar. These look like healthy little breakfast biscuits. They are organic. They have Elmo on the front because Elmo means health, right? This Earth's Best Bar has 4 grams of added sugar. This is 0.4 tablespoons of sugar. So 0.4 tablespoons is 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. So again, imagining opening up your toddler's mouth for breakfast and feeding them 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. So another sneaky one. It's good. It's got Elmo and it's organic, right? Let's talk about these little Plum organic Jammy Sammies. These are good to grab and take on the go. They're good for if you have to get out of the house early and you want your kid to have breakfast. This one is 9 grams of added sugar. So again, when I'm looking at some of these ingredients, the first ingredient is whole wheat blend, and then we've got barley, and then we've got tapioca syrup, organic peanut butter, cane invert syrup, date paste. Date paste is another sugar, guys. So this one, just in the first 4 or 5 ingredients, 3 of them are sugars. We are going to look at Powerade because our kids on the go, we're playing sports, we're playing soccer, and Powerade as marketed as an essential or you need this to rehydrate your children. Powerade's second ingredient is sugar. First ingredient is water, second ingredient is sugar. In this Powerade, there is 1.68 tablespoons of sugar. So this is in 1 serving. Now, this jar right here is 2.5 servings of Gatorade. So in just this little bit, there is that much sugar in there. I don't know about you, but I don't want to open up my 6-year-old child's mouth and pour the sugar into them to rehydrate them after playing sports. That's just crazy talk. So with Powerades and Gatorades, they come in a sugar-free version. This is the regular Powerade that has that much sugar in it. Chocolate milk. This is organic chocolate milk. So organic chocolate milk is really healthy, right? It's milk, it's dairy, it is healthy. So in this 1 container, which is easy to pack in your child's lunchbox or to give them on the run, this is 150 calories, 1.76 tablespoons. That is about 6 teaspoons of sugar. So that's a whole lot of sugar in this little container. 22 grams of carbohydrates. And when I look at this, the first ingredient is milk and the second ingredient is cane sugar. So as a general rule, when I'm looking at foods and I'm reading those ingredients label, if there is a sugar listed as the top 4 ingredients, one of the top 4, then it's not a good source of food for your kiddos. 7-Up, little can of 7-Up. 7-Up, I've heard, I don't know how many parents say that their kid gets an occasional soda, but they get the 7-Up because it's not as bad for them as Coke or Dr. Pepper. 7-Up is still loaded with sugar. It's just a lighter color and doesn't have as many food colorings in it. This 7-Up is 24 grams of sugar. That is 1.92 tablespoons. It's about 6 teaspoons of sugar in this one little can of 7-Up. Not a good option for your kiddos. Go-Go Squeezes. They're a pretty common brand for fruit pouches, which aren't as bad and don't have as many added sugars. But these are the Go-Go Squeezes that have yogurt in them, and they are loaded with sugar. So this Go-Go tube has 1/2 of a tablespoon of sugar in it. So then we get into Pop Tarts, and this one I thought was kind of interesting. Here is organic Pop Tart. I'm sorry, these are our regular Pop Tarts, and these are marketed as the healthier option. They are organic. They are full of healthier sugars, and so you would think that this would be the better option. You know, you can get this at your local box store. You can go to the health food store and find this, or find this in the organic aisle. Believe it or not, this one actually has more sugar in it. So Pop Tarts, 2.4 tablespoons in one Pop Tart serving. And this one has 36 grams of carbohydrates, 2.88 tablespoons. So remember, there are 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon. So this is almost 9 teaspoons of sugar in this healthy organic Pop Tart that we think is a better option for our kids. So be aware that just because it's organic doesn't mean that it's good for your family. You really have to read those food labels. So when we talk about food labels and whether sugar is in those top ingredients, this is wheat flour, first ingredient. Second ingredient is cane sugar. Third ingredient is cane syrup. Pumpkin puree is one of the ingredients, and that is pumpkin, but it's also got a whole lot of sugar in it. And then dextrose is one of the other top ingredients. So in these top ingredients, I've got cane sugar, cane syrup, I've got pumpkin puree, and I've got dextrose. So that is 4 different kinds of sugar in here. When we're looking at Pop Tarts, same thing. We've got flour is the first ingredient, and then we've got corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, and dextrose. Those are the second, third, and fourth ingredients in these Pop Tarts. So if you add up all of those sugars, there's probably more sugar in here than there is flour. Okay, now we're going to go to other snacks. These are given to kids as an alternative to candy a lot of times because they're fruit snacks, so they're better for you and they're not candy, right? Look at the marketing. We've got Olaf and we've got Frozen because nothing means health and wellness like Olaf and Frozen, just marketing to those kids. So let's look at the ingredients in here. Our first ingredient is corn syrup. Our second ingredient is sugar. So our first 2 ingredients in these fruit snacks are not fruit, it is added sugar. So in one little package of these, we've got 0.72 tablespoons of sugar. And we think that this is better than candy. And then we've got good old breakfast cereal. So Lucky Charms has always been marketed to children. Believe it or not, when I went to Ireland, they don't even sell Lucky Charms in Ireland. But this one is labeled as honey clover. So honey is healthy, right? We're going to do the honey Lucky Charms as opposed to the regular Lucky Charms because honey comes from bees and it's healthy, and we're marketing made with real honey. We're doing great things for our family. We made a better decision, right? So ingredients in this: whole grain corn, sugar, then we've got honey, and then we've got corn starch, which also is broken down into sugar, any starches are, corn syrup, refiner syrup, dextrose. So we've got 5 different kinds of sugar in this, but it's healthier because it's made with real honey. In all, I thought this would have a lot more sugar in it because in general, Lucky Charms is a sugary cereal. This one has 0.96 tablespoons of sugar in a serving. Let's face it, guys, we eat way more than a serving of cereal. My husband gets out a big mixing bowl to pour his cereal in when he eats it. So I can promise you that your kids are probably getting twice this amount, but 0.96 tablespoons is 3 teaspoons of sugar. Every time we're talking about sugar, I want you to imagine just opening that kid's mouth up and just pouring the sugar in. You wouldn't do that, so think about that when you're giving them foods. So what in the world do you feed your kids? Well, babies First foods are usually introduced at about 6 months old, and about 6 months old it is mainly to get them interested in foods and to start feeling different textures, start getting different flavors on their tongues. Their first foods should be vegetables, and then maybe adding in some fruits and then some proteins. One of my very favorite first foods for kiddos is avocado. It's a good healthy fat. So 6 months to a year, we're just starting to introduce them to things. I would say to try to not give them a whole lot of grains, so not the breads, not the crackers, not the pastas, because again, we're trying not to create picky eaters, and the sooner we introduce them to sugars, the quicker their brain picks up on that, and they will crave it and crave it and crave it. So fruits and veggies are great first foods, adding in some proteins, and eventually when they start to get molars is usually your cue that they are good to start introducing some whole grains, not our processed floury kinds of things. Toddlers should start eating meats and fruits and vegetables and limited whole grain carbohydrates. Good foods for them are small bites of meats, beans. We could do some whole grain things like oatmeal, quinoa. So think textures and think lower on the carbohydrate scale, and try to avoid all of this processed stuff that's loaded full of sugars. When our kids get a little bit older, and especially going into school age, when we do snacks with our kids and we're doing a snack that has carbohydrates like a fruit, I like to make sure and incorporate a protein along with it. Proteins take a little bit longer to digest. They keep our blood sugar levels a little bit more stable. So a good snack for our school age kids and our kids that are a little bit older than toddlerhood and can chew a lot better. Some good snacks would be some nuts, some meat jerky, even beans, and then adding in a fruit and a vegetable, some carrot sticks, some broccoli. And I know that a lot of parents are saying, well, my kid won't eat broccoli. That may be because they were introduced to sugars too early. I would say keep introducing it, because the more they're introduced to it and the better example you lead by showing them that broccoli is good, the more willing they are to eat those things. So I brought some things from my own pantry. Things that I think that would be better snacks. Obviously, when you look at feeding your children, you can even take it to the next level and do no preservatives, no MSG, and no food dyes, and even go organic. These came straight out of my pantry. A lot of them came straight from Walmart. Sometimes I'm really good about doing organics, and sometimes I just go to the grocery store. So these are low sodium almonds. A handful of almonds is a great protein for a snack. Beef jerky. Looking at jerkies, there are some that are geared more towards children that have no added sugars in them. I would say watch the preservatives, watch the sodium level, because jerkies can be really high in sodium, and then watch and make sure that there's not a whole lot of added sugar. Generally, the teriyaki flavored ones are going to be packed full of sugar, so read that label. If sugar is one of the top 4 ingredients, it's not a good product for you. Other nuts, sometimes almonds are too hard for kiddos. Cashews are another alternative. Powerade zero sugar. So Powerade sugar, Powerade zero sugar. I don't really like these. I don't feel like you need your kids to have these electrolyte replacers, because good old water works great. This one, it has fake sugar in it, and it's got a lot of food dyes. So in general, I would say don't rely on these, but this would be a better alternative to the sugar one. And then yogurts. Greek yogurts tend to be lower in sugar, and they are lower in fats than our other alternatives. So things like this light and fit Greek yogurt is not the best because it's got a fake sugar in it, but it is a much better option than the Gogurts that are marketed to kids. So make sure that you're reading your labels. Growing healthy kids is not easy. We all try to do our best with what we have. So I hope that I have given you a little bit of knowledge on how to read labels better and how just not to get tricked into marketing ploys. Just because it says that it's good for kids, you have to make that decision based on your own research and your own reading of labels. If you guys have any questions or concerns or have information that you want to share or you want links to some of my resources, reach out and we'll do our best to answer you on Facebook, or you can contact my office directly. My name is Dr.Aimee LaBrie and I am with Loehr Health Center. I am thrilled to continue to partner with Doula Foundation to bring you more information. If there's a particular topic that you want me to talk about next month, reach out and let me know and we'll see if we can make it happen. You guys have a great day. Thanks so much.